All right. Thank you, Oli, for joining today. So it's very exciting to have you across the world. And I'm based in Chicago, and I assume you are in Australia. So it's going to we'll have some fun time today.
Thank you for
So
having me.
yeah. So this purpose of this roundtable discussion is to let the COE leaders know business continuity is beyond the basics. So we are going to discuss that. So my name is Velu Palani. I am based in Chicago. I work for a company called HCSC. It's a Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, Texas, Montana, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. So I lead the Salesforce platform services, and I also, on the side, as a giving back to the community, I also conduct time and again with experts like Ollie or Olivier to discuss about various topics on COE. And Ollie, welcome to this session. And would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much, Velu, for having me. Olivier, I'm based in Australia. I'm currently the country manager for Odaseva. I'm also the VP for expert services. So my team helps customers deploy and make the most of their investment in Odaseva. So we help with the rollout and knowledge transfer and get the implementation with our customers right the first time. I was at Accenture before when I started in my career, and then I moved to Salesforce. So I was at Salesforce Australia for 7 years, and this is where I got my all my skills on Salesforce, and in particular the CTA certification. Fun fact is that I actually delivered this topic or talked about this topic, COE, twice in the last month. So this is something that I feel is extremely useful. And I did deliver that talk, COE, Salesforce COE from good to great, at Dreamforce this year, and together with Matt Morris from Capgemini. He's a Salesforce MVP. And we were chatting just before the session about how big is the crowd? You know, is this something that people actually care about, like COEs? We were not we did not have like super high expectation, like oh yeah, maybe we won't have this many people, and it was shocking to see how crowded the room was. The theater was full. People were sitting. A lot of people were actually standing to hear about COE and what it is that you need to do, or we suggest you do to become a great COE, what a great COE is. So it's definitely an important topic to people. So I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you, Oli. All right. So today's discussion, as Ali mentioned, so we are also going to be focused more on the data governance and compliance. So COE is a big topic. So one of the things as a COE leader myself, what is the business continuity readiness? So we will go deep into it. So we'll also look at when we say deep into it, what are the basics and what are the topics that beyond basics. That's what we are going to be covering today. And so when we look at basics, everybody, probably a lot of COE leaders, including myself, when I started my role in this company, as long as you do a backup recovery, archiving, your job is done. And then I've been into this role for about 3 years, and I talked to a lot of COE leaders and across the country, sometimes across the continents. A lot of misconceptions or misunderstanding about what is business continuity means. So that's what we are going to be talking today. And we all understand we need to have the data backup. If you're seasoned veteran in Salesforce, Salesforce doesn't do the backup. Yes, they store your data, doesn't mean that they back up your data. Storing is different than backing up. We'll talk about that. And I think you will be the right person to get into the details. And once you back up, you should know how to do a restore. And for compliance purpose, you will be archiving the data. And of course, you need to test it, make sure that this is indeed working like anything else. So this is, to me, I consider these are just the basics for any business continuity. These are the basic building blocks, but doesn't mean that you're ready with the business. Compliance and governance and regulations. The business continuity comprises of the basics and beyond the basics. That's my understanding. What's your thought on that, Ollie?
Yes, I think it is a relatively broad and complex topic. Business continuity, disaster recovery planning. It has implication on people, process, technology. So it is, and usually it goes way beyond the Salesforce org. It's very rare. Especially, I think, the audience of today, the CRM COE leaders, you're talking to most likely have an org that is connected to different systems. So when it comes down to ensuring that in case of a major disruption to your Salesforce org, you can't, and it doesn't need to be just the Salesforce org, could be major disruption in your integration layer that suddenly does not connect anymore to your backend system. So your team and your end users are using Salesforce on a daily basis, probably for business critical application and business critical usage on a daily basis. And then something major happens, they can't use it, they can't access the information, they can't serve customers. It's a big trouble for the company. So that then it includes really how you go about ensuring continuity of your business when such an incident happens. So backup is one aspect. Definitely, it's something you really want to make sure you have the ability to recover the data if you need. But then go and look at the broader picture, how you cater for a major disruption where, well, the tool you use is not available to you, or the information that is stored in the tool that you use, your CRM, is corrupted or has been deleted, or maybe, these days with ransomware has actually been taken over by an external party. So how do you go about all of this? So you need to communicate the issue. You need to have some planning, a lot of planning upfront before you go and roll out your solution to production to cater for all of these incidents. So there is a lot of preparation, and this is way beyond just software. There is people who's in charge. What's the chain of command? How do you get organized to recover and analyze in the first place where the problem is? What's the quickest path for to restore the service? So it is something that is significantly complex, and surprisingly, back in my days at Accenture, I did build a few highly visible systems for the French government, entities within the French government. The tax online, it was one of them, and this is one that when people are filing their tax return, it has to be up and running. You can't have the unavailability of the system in the news. That would be terrific. The minister would be yeah, all over the media. So this is something that is just like not conceivable. And before we actually roll out the solution, we had a very extensive preparation around BCP and DRP. So what if something goes wrong? What do we do? How do we go about communicating? What's the team? How is the team getting organized? How do they communicate? All of that was actually super critical because the system was critical, and it was not on Salesforce. It was a custom stack. The entire stack was full custom, and there was a lot of scrutiny on these BCP and DRP. And I feel that with the SaaS and the movement to the cloud, maybe we lost a little bit of the focus around BCP and DRP. We take for granted that a lot of that will actually be taken care of by the providers, the SaaS providers, the cloud providers, the PaaS providers, and it's not really completely accurate. Far from that. So yeah, so I think you need to cover the basics, but there is plenty that you need to do as a CRO leader.
Thank you. And the more and more I think about this area, it kind of, if you ask me what is one of the most things that I'm worried about, is number one is security as a COE leader. Number two is the governance and the compliance and making sure the data is protected.
Yes.
So as part of this, I like this slide that data is a shared responsibility, and so very intriguing to see it is shared responsibility. What do you think? What do you mean by shared responsibility? I thought it's my company, my data. Why would I worry about shared responsibility of others?
Surprisingly, so we did a study recently at Odaseva around the essentially, are you ready for a SAS ransomware attack? So I think the report is available online. It's called the State of SAS Ransomware Attack Preparedness. Okay. And so we studied and we interviewed different leaders across different geographies and industries. And it is some of the learning are actually shocking. 25% of the respondents said they believe that it isn't their responsibility to protect their SaaS data. And 28% only said they were very confident about their ability to recover after a cloud or a SaaS ransomware attack. So there is there is this, I think, misconception around who's responsible for the protection of your data, particularly when you're on Salesforce or any cloud for that matter. So that picture that you see on screen shows your responsibility as a customer. So if you develop your system on-prem, custom stack, this is all on you. So from the physical data center to the data governance, you are the one dealing with everything. As we move towards SaaS, we are abstracting and removing some of that responsibility. So the typical infrastructure service PaaS or SaaS, they look after the infrastructure, the operating system in most cases, the network connectivity up to the application. And in the case of the data governance, the ensuring compliance, that whatever you're storing in Salesforce comply with applicable regulation, this is actually still very much on you. So data remain largely your responsibility. Salesforce and other providers, but today we're talking about CRM. So Salesforce will cover in their MSA largely all the infrastructure, and they provide a fantastic Lexus service. It's just like really fantastic. But if something goes wrong inside your database, so for example, you have a accidental deletion or accidental corruption based essentially coming from a user or rogue admin, or an integration gone wrong, or you deploy something that is, a piece of metadata that is connecting your org to a pre-prod environment, and that's an error, right? So despite all the testing that you do, the verification that you do, this situation can happen, and then suddenly you have, your live database, your production database, corrupted, and this is big. This is a big impact for your business. Who's responsible for fixing it? That's not the SaaS provider. This is you. The SaaS provider will typically restore the service if something goes wrong inside the database. They lose a disk, or the heartbeat between the Oracle cluster is not working. Something of that nature. So from the infrastructure side, they will recover the service as per their restore RPO and RTO agreed in the MSA. But the data inside the database, this is your responsibility. And again, the report that we did publish recently shows that there is this misconception around who's responsible to protect the data. So I think it's very important for the CRM COE leaders that we're talking to today to acknowledge and take action to actually take control. This is, the data is your responsibility.
I totally agree with you on that. I think a lot of the big challenges for COE leaders is to convince the leadership. This takes a lot of energy, effort, planning. It's an ongoing effort. It also costs money. It is
Yes.
It takes a lot of resources, including a lot of funding. And I have talked to the leaders, CIO leaders, even though not everybody, most of the people I talk to, they agree. But I ask them, what's the number one reason that you cannot get this done? You know what they say? It's funding. So I find it so strange that the companies want to be good to their customers, but they cannot prioritize in terms of funding. So anyway, I don't want to get into the details there about funding, but that's what I'm hearing. And that even for me personally, it's challenging part is to talk to the leaders and say, you know what, this needs a lot of funding to get this done.
Yeah.
So we certainly talk about it. Let's move to the next topic. This is a good. So when you say great COEs build a better data value chain, I really, why do, as a COE leader, it's just, we get pulled into so many directions. And like, for example, data is one component. Security is another component. Talent development is another component. Strong architecture is another component. And user experience, user interface, coming up with building solutions where you see the right metrics. So everything seemed to be so not challenging, so demanding in terms of resources. When I look at this, this is an interesting piece of artifact about the data. So can you expand? What do you mean by this?
Yes, and you're right. There, the COE is typically extremely busy. There is a lot to be done, and COEs are doing a lot of things already. They are typically good COEs have invested a lot into DevOps, typically moving metadata around and leveraging all the innovation from the ecosystem, either Salesforce providing or the App Exchange, and moving things around with the Salesforce DX DevOps Center and things like this. So we've done tremendous progress in that space. All of the user experience and the dialogue and the conversation with the business. So I think the COE is definitely getting busy, but I think fundamentally, if you think about that, why do we have a COE? I think in the first place, what is a COE? So I think you need to define that. But why do we have a COE? What's the fundamental reason why we have COEs is to deliver business value. Okay, so and we deliver business value through the ability to innovate, adjust to the market, to changing condition on the market. We need to change something, roll out very quickly. So there is already a lot of things that good COEs do today to deliver business value. But often what we see is that we don't spend enough time around data, and your Salesforce environment is a gold mine of information. You have invested a lot of effort, a lot of energy, as you said, to roll out all these functionality on your Salesforce platform. So the first thing that you need to do is ensuring business continuity. It's just like if you run your business on Salesforce, you need to have and you want to ensure that the service is running all the time. So you don't want to lose critical information that is stored in Salesforce. And the more complex your org is, the more users you have, the more difficult it is to protect from disaster. And if you don't plan for that particular risk to be covered, you're going to put yourself into a lot of trouble. So yes, as a COE, you've done a lot of work to move things around. Have you spent enough time ensuring business continuity? Well, I think not necessarily today. We actually, from a pure technology perspective, there was a great session we did deliver at the Data Innovation Forum this year for Salesforce Architect. So this is an initiative from Odaseva to educate the wider architect community. And there was a great session by Junpei from Salesforce Australia. He's a CTA. And he delivered a session around designing Salesforce solution for high resilience. So there are a lot of very good insight, best practice, real things that pragmatic things that you can do to improve the resilience and the fault tolerance of your application. And this is another very hot topic these days, because a lot of customers use Salesforce to do business 24/7. If you do retail and you're selling things over the internet through Salesforce, well, your customers can buy at any time in the day. So you really have the obligation to have a very resilient solution. So this is one. The second one is about regulation. So okay, you have a gold mine of information that is highly protected in Salesforce. That is worth millions, but do you comply with the applicable compliance and regulation? If not, you could be in a situation where you will stop the project for a while to comply, and then therefore you're not delivering business value anymore. Your whole project, all the effort is dedicated to the compliance. So and this is not necessarily just Salesforce, it's Salesforce and then every other connected systems to Salesforce. So compliance, if you do not address that, you will eventually expose yourself to a lot of issues, and then stop delivering business value to your business stakeholders. The second one is, the third one is, okay, you've got a gold mine of information in your org, but can you actually move it around? Can you fuel business intelligence to do cross systems analytics, derive actionable insights, things like this? Can you take that data, seed easily a training environment with realistic data that is representative of what you see in production? So the ability to move data around, to control that data, so you don't want to move that data from production into a pre-production environment and expose this particular environment to data breach. So you still need to have this highly secure, potentially anonymized, very likely anonymized, because you want to make sure that you're protecting that piece of information. So the ability to move, transform this data and mine essentially this gold mine of information is, I think, very, very important. And this is what we see as better data value chain. Is you collect data, you secure it, you comply, you move it around, and when all of this come together, then you have the ability to move and use that data to drive more business value. Does it resonate with you, Velu?
Absolutely. And this is where I just wanted to inject a little bit about my background at this point in time. I started using Salesforce in 2000. So for 21 years, pretty much this is what I've been working on. I have everything that I worked with in my consulting career. I had my own consulting firm, but Salesforce, I was the customer number 50 or less than 100 actual paid customer.
Wow.
Worked with lots of small, large, medium businesses across the globe. So the small companies grow faster. They see the value of the competitive advantage because everything they can see it in Salesforce. Where the larger the organizations that I go and work with them, they still use that as a more of, hey, I need to manage my salespeople better, or I need to improve my NPS score.
Yeah.
But can you think about if you can reduce the opportunity stage by 10%, close faster, and you can compete with your business, the other businesses? So I haven't seen a lot of leaders looking at that way. So I do, it resonates well with me. I was a salesperson myself. I ran a consulting firm. So every time when I look at the leaders, the platform is more of a data storing and sales and service. This is beyond sales and service. It's all about bringing your business to the competitive advantage, which, I can go on to it, but I don't want to. We have a lot of other topics to cover.
And yes, so that sort of intelligence to augment the I think it's I had the opportunity to see Peter Schwartz a couple of times live at the Salesforce event. So he was the sort of an innovation futurist evangelist. So he's an amazing person. But he was actually talking a lot about AI. So we see a lot of focus these days around AI and bringing AI in most of these business processes. And his definition of AI was not actually artificial intelligence, it's augmented intelligence. They call that little AI. So it is, what is it that you can, to your point, what is it that you can bring into the process to augment the ability of the capacity of the salesperson to make better decision, to have better guidance. What is the next step? How can I reduce? Who do I need to talk to now to actually close this particular opportunity? So all of these augmented intelligence is critical, is key, and it sometimes goes way beyond just the data that you mine in Salesforce. So you need to correlate information from different systems. Potentially, and then if you need to do that, you in the first place, you need to be able to extract the data that you have in Salesforce, move it into, a Snowflake or a big table or other large-scale BI engines like this. So yeah, the ability to move that data, get new insights, and move that back in, because you don't want to.
You need to be able to make decisions, right?
So it has to be actionable. It has to, come back to Salesforce with a call to action to the user. So there's heaps that Salesforce does already to bake AI and augmented intelligence in Salesforce. Think about, the lead scoring is a very good example. How do you prioritize leads based on a number of factors, and not necessarily just the one that are based on the field are captured in the lead. It could be propensity to close that lead and convert that to an opportunity, because there are similar leads that have been convert it as an opportunity. And so this, so I think there is already plenty of capabilities within Salesforce to book.
I agree. I totally agree with you. So
Yeah.
so one of the things that we wanted as a CRM
Yeah.
COE leader, right? So we talked about beyond the basics and the beyond basics. We talked about the great COE leaders bring value. So one of the I manage a very large environment. We have about 10 instances. We want to move data from one org to another org, which is rightly so, because you're doing one org for sales, one for marketing, service, and so on, right? So in the multi-org environment, business continuity plan, you might be doing a backup of the same customer information in 10 times, because if the customer information is stored in one instance and it's stored in other instances, instead of should we back up? We should back up everything, which is important. So how do you handle the business continuity plan in a multi-org environment? And if you can share with us, how does Odaseva help us in this process?
So in the multi-org context, so like you said, so you have a multi-org, this is your decision, you went through an org strategy, or potentially, you inherited those orgs because of a merger, an acquisition, or some departmental initiatives that were under the radar and started that org, and suddenly, because they need to start integrating with the rest of the ecosystem, it comes into the COE. It's just like these are possible scenarios. But I trust that if you have today multiple orgs, it's because you put some thought about why this is good for you, and why this is good for your organization. So yes, so you probably need to start doing the backup and having the ability to restore that data in your different orgs. But then once you have multiple orgs as a COE, already extremely busy, you need to think about other capabilities. For example, you will define security policies applicable to these different orgs centrally. It could be regulation, or this could be your internal policies within the company. And but so whilst you define that centrally, you need to apply those security and implement those securities in each and every org. Okay, so therefore, the question for COE leaders is how do I ensure that these security configuration and policies are consistent across the different orgs? So you need a mechanism to actually pull that data and some of these configuration and have a dashboard. So, has this been implemented? Do we have a common set of tooling available to these different orgs to enforce those policies? So for example, at Odaseva, we do have products specifically around data privacy. So these were born essentially on the back of GDPR back in 2018. So the right of access, right to be forgotten, and other things like this. So if you make a decision to use a platform like this, like Odaseva, to implement some of the aspect around privacy, and you make that available to all of your orgs, then you start to have one way of enforcing and implementing those data privacy. If you don't have this sort of capability, then you're at risk of having inconsistencies in terms of how you implement security and privacy across the orgs. The core data model as well, you may end up, you said you have customers in different orgs. What's the definition of a customer? And how does this differ between one org and another one? So again, having a platform, a data management platform that is connected to your different orgs to essentially establish the drift or at least give you a picture of how those core data models, so let's say account contact, is account contact the same across all your orgs on those key fields? Who has modified the core model? Who has configured and extended the model, and how much of that has been modified? You want to be able to do to have all this information. So so essentially, you need a tool that has these data management capabilities that you have available within your COE, connecting to all of your orgs. If you have that, then you can get some of that multi-org complexity under control to some extent.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing that. And I do see here,
So
Odaseva has got a BCP and DRP methodology, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you can briefly touch upon, then we move to the next topic.
Yeah. So this is, I don't think we need to go into a lot of detail on this one, but these are two white papers that are I think extremely useful. They are available on our website. You can download them, read them. So the backup was written in 2015 by our founder in Salesforce, and it's really about doing the backup, what you need to consider when selecting your backup solution, and then more importantly, restoring. So what are some of the practices around restore? Is your org restore ready? You need to know that. And then the BCP, so the second topic is really more around planning and testing. So identify those business processes and data that are absolutely critical. Think about how you protect them. What's the RPO or RTO for these business core business process, and document and test. The fundamental thing, and one of the key reasons we see customers struggling with restoring is usually the lack of preparation, lack of planning. So the number one restore failure is being unprepared in your org. So
I agree with you on that. I have talked to recently some of the COE leaders, we already taken a backup. We tested it. We tested it during the actual implementation.
Yeah.
We tested in between once. I said, okay, how often do you do that? And your data is in a constant change.
Yes, correct.
People building inside Salesforce, a lot of fields change, a lot of objects come in, a lot of objects go away, archival. So what you did about a month ago is probably going to be a lot different today. So as a policy, we are also in the process of instituting how often we test it. Testing is not about, oh yeah, it's a restore is working. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, are we really getting the data back where the business can start using the data right away? It's not, it's one thing, technically it works, but the other thing is, this is what business expects to see when something goes wrong and we say we are ready to use it back. I think it's a big opportunity for a lot of companies, and I think the leaders should pay attention to it. So, so let's move on to the next one. Data governance unlocks. If you see here, unlocks the innovation. Why do COE leaders care about this?
Well, precisely because it unlocks innovation. So the first and foremost, when we look at building a better data value chain, one of the first things you need to establish is a data governance framework. So who's creating the data? What sort of regulation we need to comply to? Who's managing that data? Who can modify it? What's the data lineage? So there is a lot of domains, as you can see on at the bottom, around data governance that you need to implement. But if you implement all of these, not necessarily all of these day one, but these different data governance practices, then you unlock innovation. And so this is the, this is your ROI. You go through establishing your data governance framework, not just for the sake of it. It's because there is evidence that it unlocks innovation. So this was a report from Blue Wolf from a couple of years back that shows that once you have this data governance framework in place, you are 3 times more likely to actually bring more business value to your business. So there is an incentive for you to actually go and implement data governance. And it's sometimes I've been working with customers in the past where data governance was a bit of a burden for the Salesforce teams. Just like, this is really, ticking the box exercise. And I had to, work with my teams and say, no, this is actually not the case. There's a good reason for this. And it's being able to move the data safely, securely. We are in control. And with that, we can deliver more business value. But if you go to the next slide, Velu, you will actually see, and maybe this is overwhelming if you look at all of these disciplines, just like, do I need to do all of this day one? No. And the more you do, the better. But the fundamental thing here is that governance is a journey. So you will actually change and evolve your data governance as you grow, and as you mature. So the governance you implement when you have a small org, small team, one particular business requirement is not the same you need when you have, like you said in your case, you have sales, service, and most likely health cloud as well.
Yes.
Because of the business, so, and multi-teams, you have different orgs, distributing team. So the governance in this case is definitely not the same as the one it was when you started. And you need to start with, foundation capabilities. So these are the business continuity and privacy. These are non-negotiable. You need to have backup in place and you need to comply. That's a given. As soon as you have, personally identifiable data that you manage in your org, it comes with a lot of responsibility on your end. So you need to do that. But then as you grow, you are able to implement other capabilities like moving the data around, anonymization, the destruction of the data, eventually archiving. These are things that you will. So it's a journey, and that I feel a little bit less overwhelmed knowing this. Okay, I don't need to do all of these disciplines day one. The more you do, at the time where you have the funding and you have the resources available to you, so when you're delivering your project, that's the best moment to actually do that. If you do that after, like you said, you're at risk of not having enough funding. Your team is much smaller, and you're doing a lot of maintenance, still, adding a lot of value, business value, but your funding is gone. So your team and your partners have gone to other project as well. So you have a little bit less ability. So the more you do upfront is best, but it's a journey from my perspective.
I agree with you. And I want to share to the audience here, large companies like us, are any large global companies, they all have something called innovation. So there is a separate innovation team. There's a separate digital transformation team. What I have noticed here, innovation doesn't start from the innovation team. Innovation starts with the data. Yes, there is a lot of companies also have data is stored. There is a chief analytics officer, chief data officer, and all those folks. So if you see the data as a data standalone, it doesn't make any sense. But if you see data with people using the data, working with the data, is much more valuable. So my experience so far with in this space, the innovation team should be working with Salesforce. The digital transformation team should be working with Salesforce. That's how you are going to be transforming your business. That's my, I've worked with several clients in the past, and I also talked to a lot of people, and I will be attending Chief Digital Officer Summit next week.
Mhm.
And I want to understand how this innovation separately and how does it work with Salesforce data. I think that's going to be a good finding. That's something that I thought I would share with this for people.
So how do you go about that? Are you typically breaking the silos where, as you said, the innovation team is separate? Do you bring innovation lead and chief data officer as part of it? These are your stakeholders, and so you extend your stakeholder group to those people, so they are part of the conversation. Is that the way you go about that?
It is. See, what happens is, large companies like us, it's a lot of teams operate in siloed manner. So there is a Salesforce team. It's all about building solutions, features, stories, and epics.
Yeah.
They're focused on delivering, but are they really, what is it's like anything else. You are so focused on doing what you need to do, but you ignore the fact, the data growth, compliance, governance, and then the innovation behind it. All those things happen siloed environment. So me as the COE leader, I'm looking at, okay, every piece of data comes into Salesforce. We do an transactional reporting for leadership who run sales and service functions. But there is an innovation team. They take all the data from transaction system, put it in the data lake, use snowflakes like that, things like snowflakes or platforms like it, and then they build models, the claims model, customer journey model, member journey model. But the fact is, at the end of the day, when you make decisions, it has to come back to Salesforce. I don't think a lot of companies do that yet. They just suck the data from Salesforce and they do some things, and then it goes to the leadership. And a lot of people, like architects and some subject matter experts, they don't even know what happens with the data.
Yeah, so it's a fragmented experience at the end. And it's difficult to get to move to central BI like Snowflake. It is hard. There is complexity in extracting and sucking data out of Salesforce. So you go through this complexity. You need to go to the end and bring that information back to Salesforce to actually have the full return on investment.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be cycled. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah.
But let's move on. I know it's just an exciting topic to talk. So MultiORG. So we talked a little bit in the past, and now what does this mean for a COE leader when it comes to the business continuity?
So like we touched on a couple of different things, and so we can probably go relatively quick on this one. The fundamental point is you have different orgs. So as a COE leader, how to ensure consistency and across these different orgs, how are you essentially in control of security policies, core data model drift, metadata drift as well. So if you especially sandboxes versus production, how do you identify differences between reference data and pricing catalog? So if you have multiple orgs selling similar product, and again, I'm not here challenging the fact that you have multi-org versus one. It's just a fact, right? So but with that comes the necessity for CRM COE leaders to be in control. So there is a little bit more that you need to do. So and therefore you need to have a platform that actually is Salesforce aware, because that's you're manipulating mostly Salesforce data, and then it needs to know how to interact with the data, how to interact with the metadata. So once you have a data management platform that is Salesforce aware, you can connect and extract from these different orgs and produce dashboards and consolidate dashboards for the COE leaders across orgs. Yeah.
So one question I have here. So
Yeah.
let's say I have, in my situation, I have 10 orgs. So this having CDP, which is data, Salesforce data aware. So would it be easier to have a CDP to move data between orgs rather than using ETL, putting it into a common place, sending the data back? What do you think would be in your experience, be a right solution for a multi-org situation?
Yeah, so it's slightly different, a slightly different lens to what I was mentioning. So in this particular case, you're interested in building the customer 360. So everything you know about a customer from different places. So yes, the technology from Salesforce is, for that matter, is interesting. But in this particular case, for the COE leaders having multi-orgs, there is more than just it is a great achievement if you're able to build that customer 360, but there is more to it. Like I said, metadata and core data drift is something that you need to be in control, and this is not something that you would address necessarily with either an ETL or the CDP. So the CDP, I think, is great for building that unified view of the customer.
Gotcha. No, this is an opportunity. I'm trying to still learn that side of it. So let's move on to the compliance piece of it, right? So as a COE leader, you do need to focus on compliance, right? You talked about the basics, we talked about the governance, data protection, and so on and so forth. So where does compliance come in for the COE leaders?
Well, this is actually, so this slide was borrowed. I borrowed that slide from a presentation at Dreamforce a couple of years back when GDPR was coming. So that was probably around like the 2017, 2018 time. And look, if you're doing business in Europe or other geographies, or eventually in specific industry, there is very likely one regulation that applies to you. And if not, then probably one that is cooking that will be applied to you. So the point here is you need to anticipate as a COE leader. This is important. And if you start collecting customer data, PII data, these are some of the things that you need typically to think about. So collecting consent, protecting that data against breach, give the customer the view about what are you storing about them, give them the ability to request you deleting this particular information, or if the regulation tells you otherwise, you need to delete that after 7 years, or as soon as you don't need that data anymore, you need to get rid of it. So I think the point is, storing this sensitive information in Salesforce. Not just in Salesforce, but in this particular case in Salesforce, comes with a lot more responsibility for the COE leader. So who has access to it, and so and compliance is complex, and the GDPR documentation, so the specification, what is it that you need to do, is like 80 pages. It's a lot of content, and you have more than one regulation applicable today, country-wise, or state-wise, or industry-wise. So the recommendation that I would make, or suggest to the COE leaders, is actually to work with partners who are expert in that particular field, and then talk to what is it that I need to do, and how quickly do I need to comply? Because again, if you don't monitor what's happening and you are asked to comply, and this is super urgent, this is high visibility, you've got no choice, it will actually translate to slowing down the entire project. Stop bringing business value in order to rectify and be compliant. So So by monitoring and working with partners that do operate in that field, you minimize the risk of having to stop the project to actually comply. And it's a moving target. What we see at Odaseva is it's a matter of when. So we know that things are quickly changing, and there are more and more regulation coming in different geographies, and there will be more, especially on the back of, large scale data breach, PII data breach. In Australia, unfortunately, over the last months, we had 3 significant data breach for a telco, a medical insurance company, and this is forcing the government to actually think about and accelerate their thinking about bringing regulation fines if you do not comply. So, and this is not a trend. This is something that actually, as an end customer, I value very much, that the government and other regulatory body look after and care about that, and force companies to actually implement the right practices, because this is my data and I don't want to be in the situation where my data is leaked. So I think it's good. It's useful, but it's complex at the same time. So I think for leaders, work with partners who are operating in that space. Yeah.
Gotcha. And one thing that I also wanted to share, first of all, thank you. This is, I cannot emphasize more than what you said on the compliance piece of it, which is a common sense, where COE leaders oftentimes, where they failure to understand, they understand the importance, but they're unable to tell the story to the leadership to get the funding and things moving. And that's where the partners can help. I've seen some of the good partners, they have real stories to tell what happens if you are not compliant. And so it's an interesting topic. So let's keep going. So we move to a completely a fun topic.
Yes, it is definitely a different topic to compliance. But it's around growing. So you fast forward, you've been extremely successful with your Salesforce implementation. You're delivering heaps of business value. You're collecting a ton of information in your org in a very compliant way. Good. So, story goes, it's nice. You're achieving a lot of great value. But if you leave your org unattended, like you grow data, you may end up with the need to archive. So monitoring the growth and archiving is something that eventually you will need to do. And you will typically do the archiving for two different reasons. One is performance, and the other one is compliance. So you need to remove the data. But let's say you've got that covered. You will eventually, or maybe there is no regulation that applies to you. You will still eventually hit a point where too much data in your org will have an impact, and therefore have impacted the quality of service, and then bring disruption. So again, we are in this business continuity and protection of the quality of service topic. So for that reason, I think being in control of the data growth, put in place archiving when it is necessary, is something that COE leaders should be thinking about. And surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, it's just like you said, there's so many things that you need to think about. Archiving is that one thing where you say the problem is not going to be for now. It's maybe 4 years down the track. So I've got time. Yes, true. However, when that problem hit, you may end up with hitting a particular governor limit, and it actually stopped a process from running, and then you have to take action. And some of these actions are not as easy as it seems. we've had a customer doing a lot of extensively using email to case in Salesforce, so creating case based on email. And then so you create a case, you attach the content of that email to the case, and then they use that very extensively. There is actually one particular governor limit, the CRM content, that is limiting the number of attachment of files that you can store in Salesforce to 30 million per org. And once you hit that, that's it. You cannot ingest anymore. So then you need to, you scramble to actually get rid of these files and purge, and this is where it's getting a little bit difficult. So the suggestion and recommendation to COE leaders is to actually think about archiving at the time you're running the project. What are the things that you need to do? Because it's cheaper to do that now, even though you're not necessarily going to need to archive day one because your database is maybe very empty. But you have the processes in place, so you avoid that big, solving that big problem that is a major disruption for your business. So we've done another great session at the Innovation Forum, the Data Innovation Forum for Salesforce Architect this year, where our founder, the Odaseva founder and CEO, Sovan Bin, did a presentation around archiving in the context of LDV, sharing a customer story. And this is really a fantastic session to watch, and you will learn why this actually matters and why it matters to address that as early as you can and when you have the resources. So avoid that. I don't have the funding to fix it. Well,
I agree with you.
So this is, and again, I think this is good to have data under control. This is also very good to have the right data inside yours. You had this picture. I think what's your take on bad data? So are you in control of the quality of data that is in your org?
No, agree, but also for the COE leaders to see here that growth, meaning it's not about business growth. Maybe we should be a little bit more specific. It's a data growth and innovation.
Yes.
So
right.
What you talked about is the data growth. So
data,
I mean, we all live in the data space. Even if we breathe, it actually gets recorded on my Fitbit, and then it goes to the cloud. So the data is everywhere, right? So the data growth in Salesforce 10 years ago versus today, it's the speed in which it grows much faster.
Yes.
And that means we are collecting a lot of junk also. So a lot of information that is never touched upon, and we are going to be backing it up. So a lot of information that we have to look at. So the reason that the data growth does not equal directly to the innovation, but the good data equals innovation.
Yes.
The junk data is going to hinder your growth. Sometimes it might even bring down your business because you're making decisions on the wrong data information available, right? So, So we're moving on to the next topic as a COE leaders, right? So we want to be prepared for uncertainties. So we talked about the basics. We talked about the compliance, governance, data growth, innovation. One of the things that the COE leaders, I personally feel that we should look at beyond compliance and so on, right? What are the uncertainties that can happen, right? As you mentioned, the ransomware is a big issue. Corporate direction. Oftentimes the companies compete, and then the world changes, the companies change, and they need to change the direction. And then when something goes wrong with your systems or the SaaS provider or partners like external vendors who partner with CRM systems, that anything can go wrong, right? As the COE leaders should be ready for those kind of situations. So I've personally seen myself, companies We have one of my previous experience, one of the CRM partners failed to have that system. See, we send the data to them from Salesforce and then they bring it back. That particular information got breached. All of a sudden, even we were all scrambling to figure out how. We sent some information to them. What did they do with our data? Was this stolen? And even though they comply with all the contracts don't make any difference when the data is already lost. What do you do with the contract? It's just so. So as a COE leader, it's important for us to be prepared for uncertainties. So, what is there anything that you can share, Oli, on this space?
No, I think you're right. Yeah, I think it's really about it's planning. So BCP and DRP have the P inside, so it's planning. So it's and this is what we see again when we help customers on restore situation is that they struggle because they're not ready. They haven't tested the readiness of their organization to handle with failure. So the fault tolerance, the high resilience, these are things that you need to bake into your architecture when you're designing and building Salesforce or in your architecture. That's actually the right time to think about all of that. What if scenarios? So you need to be prepared for the unlikely events, for the anticipate, something bad is going to happen. Not that I'm a pessimistic guy, but I think it's part of my responsibility and the responsibility of COE leaders to be ready for this. So it's a lot about planning. So I think that's really the key is planning and look at what are some of the single point of failure of your architecture, and then ask yourself, what if this thing doesn't work, and go beyond the assumption that no, it's never going to happen. It's we're using a cloud, so it's 100% available. It will scale. What if it doesn't? What if it doesn't?
That doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So now we all know that. So we are actually almost time. First, and as you see here, call to action, right? So as COE leaders, we need to be constantly looking at all these 5 buckets beyond the basics. But I don't think this is the only thing that, this is what you and I think of it, but obviously I'm sure there is something that we do not know. I would love to have the COE leaders. We will be posting this online. If anyone has questions, they can reach out to you, Oli, or they can even reach out to me as well. So we are happy to help the COE leaders. It's important, the data without CRM systems, does it even make any sense? The data is the main, that's the nervous system, and that's the whole purpose of CRM. Good data, make sure that we have a compliance, governance, the data growth, uncertainties, compliance, and of course, you have data, your environment is good, but if you are not unable to innovate and grow your business, compete in the world, what's the point of called CRM? It's a customer relationship management. So you don't want to manage the relationship, you want to nurture, you want to build a business, and you want to compete. And I think you rightly said in the past, as a COE leader, you don't look for these things. You look for beyond governance, growth, backup, recovery, and archiving. You are about adding value to the business. That's the whole purpose of the COE leader, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What's your thought?
Yeah, I think like I said, if you come back to what the fundamental role of a COE, what is it here for? It's to deliver business value. And if you approach data stewardship as a checklist, then you're probably doing it wrong. So it's not a checklist item. It's not a one-time set it and forget it. It's a constant thing. So you have to constantly monitor, evolve, and adjust your your data governance. And this is the way you add at the end all of these small actions that you take. They contribute to deliver tremendous business value to your business. And if you take great care of your customer data, then everything else gets easier. So it's easier to sell. It's easier to make customer happy. You can correlate different incidents. You can learn the mood that the customer is in. So with sentiment analysis. So there's heaps of this that that you can do once you take great care of your customer data. So great COEs, they really deliver business value above and beyond, and this is really what is the characteristic of top performing COEs, which I'm pretty sure and pretty convinced that is the audience of the CRM COE is all about, is how do we become these top performing COEs. And all of that are actions that you take, that if you take them consistently and adjust and adapt over time, then you're going to do and deliver great business value.
Thank you so much, Oli. I really appreciate sharing your thoughts and your wisdom with the COE leaders. And anyone wants to learn more or clarify some of the services Odaseva offers, you are welcome to reach out to Oli with respect to the backup planning, disaster recovery, and the basics and the beyond basics. That's how I look at it. If as a COE leader, you need to have the basics, non-negotiable.
Yeah.
But it only basics. That doesn't help you to add or deliver business value. So the whole purpose of the COE existence is to add or deliver business value. And I thank you for your time. And we are going to have some fun because today is the day before Thanksgiving. So we will, this is 2022 and we are looking forward to 23. And I thank you for your time and we will stay in touch. Any closing thoughts?
No, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. And I think it's a great initiative, Velu, to share and bring like-minded people together and improve as a collective. That's a fantastic idea. And I wish all of you a good Thanksgiving and enjoy the football and enjoy time off with the families.
Perfect. Thank you. Have a good day. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.